Judge, in this debate, firstly, I would like to frame the debate and show our case and model. Secondly, go into our first argument, which is about what the goal of education is and how we actually support that. And thirdly, how our side actually helps the lower income students, which we identify as the key stakeholders in this debate. Firstly, framing. Who are the stakeholders? We believe that the stakeholders in this debate is centered around the poor students and students who need a job right after they're right after they graduate high school, and they need employment fast because they have to support their families. So if you're the nation of an education system, the ministry and the schools that set the curriculum hours and fund priorities and the structure of tracks. So we're not actually defending an individual student's private choice, and we're going to actually not defend the destruction of general education, but we're actually instead going to prove why our side is actually better by showing that it's better for these stakeholders to be actually prepared for their after school days. So firstly, how are we going to incorporate this? And this is our model. 3 layers on this. Firstly, how we're going to have gradual change. Secondly, how students have a career that actually want to pursue starting at middle school. And thirdly, how we still have the core skills needed for life. We're going to bring gradual change into this. So what does this look like? Teachers will also learn in the process of making this system actually work. So this means that teachers will be able to adapt slowly and start learning about how this teaching method actually works. Secondly, schools will also create special classes. Then where are we going to get these resources by? Because of course this is not going to be cheap. We're going to get these resources by eliminating unnecessary classes or shrinking the expensive classes time that are only useful for certain professions, and increase different class variety and give them to people who actually need it most. Moving on to second layer, students actually choose a career they want to pursue at starting middle school. So they're going to have different courses that are going to support these different professions. So by students choosing this is going to lead to them selecting or be placed in different courses that actually are going to be used in their future professions. Thirdly, we're going to still teach core skills needed for life. So these core skills are things that people will actually use in all professions and in many situations in day-to-day life. Yes, I'll take your POI.
So you talked about how students will be able to choose a career they want to do. Two questions on this. Firstly, even though when you're doing general education, won't you be able to choose your job? And secondly, if you choose it from a really young age in which you start your education, won't you be
Yeah, I'll cut you off there 15 seconds. Also, if they choose this at a young age, then that means that they're going to be committed, so that actually teaches a good skill. But another example is Germany, because Germany is actually Germany is a real life example, because students get to choose when they actually, or what professions they want to do and use that. Moving on to our first argument, which is about the goal of education. Education exists to give every student the things that are necessary to support their lives, right? So a person who cannot earn a living cannot do anything that school promises, for example, stability, choice, or freedom. So for most families, the actual answer or the actual thing they want when they go to school is actually for a better life, and that life goes through a job. So schools should actually use this and think of this and set that as their primary goal, so that these people can get a better life and get a job that can actually support their family, support their future lives. Second, moving on to our second argument about how it's going to help lower income students. So prioritizing job skills can actually help low income students. So wealthy students can afford university and going around exploring professions that they want to do, but the poor students cannot. They just don't have the money for it. They need to go directly into work after school. So general education just assumes that there's this safety net that these people can rely on. But the special tracks in many countries allow students into stable careers, such as cooking, doing nursery, and coding and electrical work. So these jobs are actually going to lead these countries out of the poverty cycle, and it will do that in one generation, which is so much faster and so much better for these people, because they don't have to gamble their life away. Because of that, more than proud to.
Judge, we believe that when a child is in a young age, basically these people can understand the basics and how the world even works. And I believe that if you put these people's futures in a one stereotype, I believe that it's only going to lead to a worse situation, and that is where we're more than proud to oppose. So 2 things I'd like to do in my speech today. Firstly, I'd like to rebut the previous speaker, and then secondly, I'd like to move on to our team's arguments, which is about how the effectiveness and then the late realization. So firstly, what did the previous speaker say? They talked about how it helps lower income students, and then they can pursue the career that they want. Therefore, they can get a job that supports them. So, firstly, the point of a lower income students, we believe that we believe that most likely these students are going to be advised a job that's basically seen as fit for them, jobs that are extremely jobs that require a lot of labor, and we believe that that's indeed unfair. However, too, yes, even if they might get a good kind of suggestion, we believe that as I'm going to say in my other argument, we believe that when these people because especially if they're lower income students, we believe that because they have no other alternative to go, we believe that if we provide a general kind of education, we at least give them another chance if they want to go to another career, right? So they talked about how they are going to pursue the career that they want and get a job that they support. However, what we believe that is extremely hard to do because currently is in the AI generation, therefore we don't know what jobs are going to be available after 12 years of studying, right? Two, we also believe that we're basically they as the info site already advice into different kinds of field. No, thank you. They're more in demand. Therefore, it's not always the choice that they're giving, and they might also be heavily influenced by their parents' decisions, which I'm going to most talk about in my first argument. So, moving on to our team's argument, which is about effectiveness, we believe that for say when you're 6 to 8 years old, you cannot basically understand the basics and how the world even works, right? So therefore, even if you work these kids hard and train them to be, for example, a doctor, we believe that the truth is that because these kids are also humans in this case, because one, therefore, it'll be very hard for them to understand and review these topics, and two, to actually utilize it in the later part of their lives, right? See, in the past, yes, because
I said in my
okay, yeah.
I said in my framing that these students will choose their professions at around middle school when they actually go up to middle school. Then why is that actually harmful?
Because as I say in my argument, is can lead to late realization, and therefore they might not be able to change to another place, right? We believe that in the past, yes, because humans had every single job, yes, you might have been able to utilize the system. However, we believe that one, this is a generation of AI, meaning that it's extremely hard for us to know what will happen after 12 years. And two, there's also importance for these children to find their own lane in life. And three, we believe that our side is a side that actually supports these children so that they can search and eventually find a stable way to live a satisfying life that's actually fit for them. Because especially as this is a new generation with AI coming, we believe that it's extremely important for these people to actually find what they're passionate in, and therefore actually search it and go up not what the government side is suggesting, because in the government side sometimes these people can also redirect them to feel they're more in demand, right? Moving on to our team's second argument, which is about late realization. For A, we believe that the environment of these children is a very harsh environment. Therefore, when you get chosen a dream, you should only focus on that. And two, you get no chance to change your mind or give up. And we believe that there's a major problem because even if they got to choose it in middle school, we believe that these children get no second chances in life, no chances to turn back and choose another way of survival, right? We believe that in the cases of teenagers, especially near the age of 18, we believe that when they realize that they want to change their major, they cannot choose another life, and they indeed have to lead to a miserable future where they're just stuck with things that they don't want to do. And two, in the cases of the younger children, we believe that they might be heavily influenced by their parents, which means that they're immediately trapped in a situation, that system where they have to stick by the rules, where they cannot even dream of taking another path. So therefore, Judge, we believe that by having just kind of general informational kind of system, we believe that we provide more of an encouraging and supportive route for these children where they can actually learn a variety of topics and choose a career path later on their life where they're more mature and intelligent. And we believe that is why we oppose. Thank you.
So quick clarification here. Our PM basically talked about in our core framing, we said that students will be able to choose their role and their job basically from the middle school, around middle school. This will basically mean that you would choose your future job at around 7th or 8th grade. And this is basically you choosing your job, not a parent. A parent might be influencing anyone, but isn't that for every single person, even in the status quo? Currently in Korea, basically all parents want their children to become doctors, lawyers, or prosecutors. People who earn a lot, jobs that earn a lot more money than some other jobs that could be like a mechanic, for example. These jobs are all important, but parents push students to become doctors, lawyers, or prosecutors because they earn a lot more money. We believe that their rebuttal to our claim that how younger children will basically be able to choose their own job is not rebutted correctly because because it is both symmetrical. Because it is symmetrical on both sides. Basically, what we are saying is also that younger students will not become trapped, and that's our main point there. They also talk. I'd like to accept your POI.
So then are you stating that the parents' force are going to be the main attribute to the students at the end of the day?
No, they won't, because even right now, a certain amount of people can become doctors, lawyers, or these things. Like parents don't influence all of children's decisions. And this doesn't mean that children need to become what they basically study. Even at the collegiate level, basically there are not a lot of there are a lot of students, college students who don't become their job. For example, if you are a CS major, you use a lot of the time the students don't become coders. You might have passion for coding, but you don't become like an actual professional coder or like a professional working in that working environment. These
Yo,
colleges are basically like are not a lot of students right now at even at that level do not choose it. So we're basically symmetrical on both ways. Basically, the third and last argument of the opposition side is that youth unemployment rates will go down. Basically, Gen Z and Gen Alpha are being labeled as like the laziest generation ever, not getting jobs and basically thought to be not productive. The way we solve this is by making schools focus more on teaching students how to find jobs and teaching basic skills of certain jobs. The mechanization here is that basically current generations have a hard time getting jobs because of the highly competitiveness of these kinds of students. Basically, one of the most important reasons that schools push knowledge or like high school push knowledge is because you want to get into college and take as many like AP or like stronger classes and get a high score on your SAT. And universities are pushing people to basically spend money to have a diploma when they don't actually spend that time in university wisely. They might study for tests, but they'll probably forget them afterwards. They won't actually remember these things. And if you ask anyone on the streets that are in their 30s or 40s, they won't be able to understand or like tell or teach someone of basic understanding about a topic that they learned in university. We are saying that universities are not helping people learn, and high schools are basically not helping people learn by focusing on the wrong problem. They are focusing on highly very very large scale and very and these kinds of math or science subjects or these kinds of this kind of knowledge is not really necessary in a lot of future jobs. The impact here is that students learn actual life lessons and get more internships towards other like large companies. This is likely to happen because high schools and universities have will be having links and have ways for better and easily internships and easier to get internships. This will allow students to uh, become easier and have more opportunities to basically be in a job. As a result, very proud to procreate.
Madam Speaker, we believe that if you choose the path of employment over the path of general education, we believe that children who are from the age of 3 and 5, because that's when their education course starts, we believe that they're gonna start learning high off adult what economics of what adults should learn. We believe that just because they heard it from like another friend, like not because of their dad was like a lawyer or something, they'll become a lawyer too. We believe that people from a young age cannot make these kind of rational choices. Therefore, we believe that they should pick the path of general education first. I'd like to do three things in my speech today. Firstly, my rebuttals. Secondly, my argument. And third, the burdens in today's debate. Now, moving on to the rebuttals. The first speaker talks about how students would choose a career they want. Therefore, they would put in more commitment. But it's not like for general education, they can't pick the job they want. They talk about how parents would force them to do so in this certain case. But we believe that parents would force you much more because when you do general education under the premise that you start education from a really young age, when you're really young, you'll listen to everything your mom and dad says. So therefore, mean that if your dad is a lawyer, or if you just heard from somebody that being a lawyer you earn a lot of money, and therefore you would take that job because you don't know how hard it is. You don't know what would happen for you. They also talked about how like for your life you should have like a job and stuff, but they do not tell us why there's a difference between us and them. And they talked about the difference between us and them. They tell us that, oh, preparing for a job is only good, but we believe that for your longer term, not only your job is good, but we believe that if you want to go to places like university, if you want to go to places like college and stuff, we believe that no matter how, like, if you want to work for McDonald's, if you just want to go for like IT or like mechanizing or whatever, we believe that studying for it in the first place, making sure that you like it, making sure that you would consistently put commitment into it is the
POI.
best is possible later. The second speaker talked about how children will get forced by parents, in which I've already rebutted. They also talked about how children cannot get for professional jobs. We believe that in their side of the world where students do not even know what they want to do and get picked, so we believe that in that case they wouldn't get professional jobs. They also talk about yes, your POI.
Let's say that these kids are starving and they don't have any money to put food on their table after they graduate. How are they going to explore different curriculars and different like jobs and different options?
The real reason of going to university in the first place is because you have a major you study, and the real reason like you go to university is to go to a job and whatsoever. We believe that if you are in the point of getting to a university, we believe that you're gonna get a job anyways because you're not it's not like you'll fight with people that didn't go to university. Now moving on to my argument. Our third argument is about how they would receive stress over their portion. Therefore, how would they get pressure? So think of the environment these children will be placed in when they study at such a higher level. If you're 3 years old, you want to learn economics because your dad also learns it. You're gonna study economics that adults study. And we also want to know how their parents also spend a role in this. Their parents who they have to spend the rest of their time with also play a role in this. Is this crucial for their learning, in which government side does not take care of? Therefore, what would happen? In 3 years old, will learn 20 years old law and economics because of something they heard. They agreed that or they would already receive stress when learn further average, but even more because they learn at a higher level. So they either do not understand and waste time, or they try to understand and receive too much stress. So therefore, why is this bad? Children, especially young kids, usually need to play around and socialize. If they do not do so and study like 20 years old, someone they will lose their childhood. And even though they're not like 3 to 5 years old, they still have a big impact because they're impacted by the choice they made when they were really children. So moving on to the burdens, the two the two burdens governments had on how they care for the backlashes that will come when students realize that they don't want to do the thing they want to when they're young. And second, on how they ensure students get similar amounts of stress holistically compared to their average age when learning with adults learn. Thank you.
Judge, in today's debate, I'm going to do three things. First, do some clarification. Second, do some rebuttals. And third, do the clashes identified in this debate. Now, Judge, I'd like to do some important clarifications from the start of the debate. Right? Judge, the students who are actually able to afford the fine between graduating and finding a job is not really a part of this debate in the first place, right? Okay, the second clarification here. Judge, the students, like, we are not forcing the students to actually get a job like during middle school. We're just like suggesting them so that they can start thinking about the job when they're in middle school, right? Now, I would like to move on to my rebuttals. Judge, side proposition, I talked about parental pressure will happen in our world since we choose it at a young age. Okay, first point here. Inside opposition's world, they also choose their career when they're in middle school too, right? Judge, let's do some meta debating here. Judge, does the parental pressure not happen inside opposition's world? No, right, Judge? Even inside opposition's world, parents pressure, especially in Korea, to become doctors and all of those things. And therefore, this argument is a deadlock and does not stand at all. I'll take that later. Judge, the side opposition has also talked about how the people who are really young will learn adult stuff things. Judge, think about this well, right? Judge, in the status quo, do 3-year-olds learn calculus? No, the same things will happen, right? Judge, when we are saying that we will prioritize employment, we don't mean that we will start teaching employment since they're 3, since they're 7, since they're like 8, or when they're in like elementary school and all of those things, right? What we're saying is that we're going to prioritize like the employment education over the education that is happening in the status quo, as I'm going to mention in my classes. The side opposition has also talked about how since the kids choose their job at a young age, they will not choose a professional job. This does not make sense at all, since the same thing happens inside opposition too, where they actually choose their jobs in middle school too. But before moving on, I'll choose the POI.
So you talk about how children like they won't receive a lot of like parental like force by them, but we already explained to you that because they're young people that only
Oh, no,
listen to their
we never said they would not receive parental pressure. What I was saying that the same thing happens in your world, so it's a deadlock. To move on to my clashes, what is the primary purpose of education and what is the goal of education, right? Judge, we believe that education is a public investment. What does it mean? This means that the society spends billions on school because educated people contribute back to like the society through taxes and etc. Right? Judge, inside opposition, if education fails to actually help students to become employable and it like does not actually help the low income students, like what's the purpose of education in the first place, right? Judge, the rich students will get a job no matter what, right? Judge, this is very important because since the main stakeholders are the incoming people, like the side opposition does not support these people at all. Okay, second point here. Schools should prioritize what students cannot easily get elsewhere, right? Now, what I mean by this, I mean the low incoming students, right? Judge, the students can independently explore history or like other things throughout life after they get a job. However, Judge, they need to learn internships, like how to like get a career and all of those things. They can only do it in schools with with the school's help, especially the low incoming students, right? So this is very important because who can actually afford to spend years studying a wide range of subjects before getting a job? The wealthy ones or the poor ones? Just this is obviously the wealthy ones, and the wealthy ones, as mentioned before, will get a job in both worlds, and that does not matter in this debate that much. Judge, I'd like to move on to my second point, which is what don't you think like prioritizing like things parts of the employment better prepares students for the future? Now, just as mentioned before, the time is limited, especially for the low incoming students. And this is why preparing them for the future is very important. And just therefore, side proposition clearly win this debate and take this debate home. Thank you.
In the status quo, general education is the normal way of education so far from the start of kindergarten. However, implementing another system of employment preparation as a prioritization is going to be a hard step for these students that have already learned this to take because they need to learn concepts that are going to be challenging, that are going to be university level. Also, they might usual students change their realization of what they want to do at the end of the day. So the best case scenario for the government side is how middle school students are not rational enough at all to actually choose a wise choice they want to do of their work or labor. So they might want to become one time a K-pop idol, a pro gamer, or even some sort of unrealistic changes or things like lawyers, doctors that are not realistic for their abilities at all, just because they want to have some money. Also, like employment education for 6 years, still young to know what the kids are actually wanting. They can actually change their realization from what they need to do from the start. So also, two, it's too long to predict what actually will be a job and would be
POI.
profitable. And no, thank you. They could still get a job without being actually replaced by AI at the end of the day. Now, I would like to move on to our clash, which is what is more important to students in the future? So, yes, to a certain extent, we agree that learning about your future realization is important only when students have found out what they want to do for the rest of their lives in the future, when they're actually taking AP courses or IB tests because they need to choose their interest for university and what they're going to be majoring. However, starting from middle school is probably an early start because like we don't know what you're
POI.
going to be expecting in the future. I will take that later. Also, also these general education is better at children getting jobs in the future because in this AI generation, it's going to be harder for these like teachers and students to predict what kind of jobs are going to be left in the future later on. Also, however, prioritizing like these employment systems and preparation, it is harder for the students because AI is developing and it is going to change their way and cannot think of what jobs there might be available in the future, as the LO stated. Also, assuming they're going to start in middle school, they're still learning concepts in life which they don't know what they do.
POI, please engage.
Yes.
Now, can you please explain how the poor people are going to be able to afford the time between graduation and like being able to get employed? And can you please stop talking about the education level, since the education level would be the same on both sides?
It's after 15 seconds, and I would like to say low-income students can also become artists, poets, musicians, athletes, and yes, even doctors or lawyers. You can force them to keep them stuck as only learning how to become plumbers or mechanics in the best case scenario. Also, counterfactual in this is how teaching all students equally and giving them the opportunity to bloom their own potential and passions, regardless of whether they are going to be poor or they're going to be rich at the end of the day in our side of the world. Also, I would like to now say I would like to also say how the governments had talked a lot about how income students don't have a lot of time in However, in our status quo, being poor is not an excuse. There are free education systems in this world where it is possible for them to do. Also, I'm going to be proving how general education would be better than employment. So students at first only know a limited amount of jobs and things they want to do. Even in set 2, even in our status quo, students try multiple things like extracurricular activities and such, and they find what they actually want to do and go with it. We believe that to this certain example, we are providing more opportunities for both the poor and the rich, regardless of their social status and etc. For these reasons, we take this debate home. Thank you.
Judge, you believe that the biggest difference with the government side is that even if we have parental influence, children do not have to choose their future at such a young age where they cannot have any power with their lives. He believes that even if it is symmetrical, children on our side at least get to choose their future at an older age when they have more influence over their parents. So firstly, we believe that they claim that this especially helps lower income students. However, we believe that is exactly the most harm in this case, because if schools prioritize employment, poor students will be basically pushed into what jobs are in demand today instead of discovering what they're truly capable of, while wealthier families can still do things like afford universities and opportunities to explore different interests. Poor students are just being forced into early career paths in your side of the world, right? We also believe that in this case, there's also in this case things like free programs in this case for them to become better and not useless, right? Second, they say that students need career skills to get things like jobs and support themselves, but we believe that no one on ours actually said that schools should ignore employment, right? We simply believe that employment should not come before a better education, a broader educational system. We believe that the best kind of employees, the best people that are chosen by employers are people who can actually think critically and solve and adapt when industries change, especially because our current generation is the generation of AI. They believe that they're exactly the skills general education actually provides. They also tell us students can choose the jobs they want, but we believe that if schools are designed around employment, choice actually becomes smaller in this case, because students are encouraged towards careers that governments or businesses believe are valuable today. However, that also is inconsistent, which means that it always changes. Yes, you agree that if they know what can happen after 12 years, it will be great, but we believe that this is simply not the case. And finally, they argue that unemployment will decrease. We believe that even if there was true, lower employment is still meaningless if people are just stuck in careers they never wanted or cannot adapt when the economy changes, right? We believe that success is not just getting your first job, it's basically having the freedom and ability to change things like careers. We believe that our side is the side that basically prepares students not only for their first job, but every single challenge they'll face in their whole career life, and that is why we're proud to oppose. Thank you.
Judge, I'd like to point out that there was no engagement from their side on the lower income student argument. So if general education is really so clearly better, why do so many countries, for example Germany, run these tracks on the side of these public schools? They also talked about how we can't teach high school students things that college level students do. But this is not very compelling, as they're high school students and the status quo that take university level education such as AP tests and hagwons and other tutoring. Also, they do not consider the real life constraints in education. Just because somebody wants to major in art does not mean that their parents or economically they cannot support everything they want to do. It's because art takes a lot of money. A lot of courses need a lot of money to do. But by using our world and using this school system where we actually provide these resources outside of students' parents handling on their own, we decrease this burden of these parents by making sure that these students get to do what they do, and we actually are the ones that actually give these people a chance to do what they want in life. So what was this debate actually about, and why do we win it? Firstly, this debate was about what school actually is for. Because in practice, for real students, it's actually more beneficial for them to go into the job industry right away, especially for the more poor and the more less fortunate ones. So their world talks about how like school is going to make you a well-rounded person, but this is like a very bad way to use your resources. Because if you just spend resources on teaching students what they don't even really need in their like after they graduate, what's the point of teaching them? Why can't you teach them in that time something that's actually going to be valuable for them, what's actually going to help these students? So our world is actually going to make these students spend their time wisely, because time is very important. So we're going to use and value that time of students, not just to support these like poor students, but also to make these students able to focus on what they want to do most. So why does our world win, and then why do we win in the big picture? It's because it's like not equal on both sides. So if we're even wrong, like which is highly unlikely, it just turns out that this job-focused education was too narrow, and students still have skills that they can use in real life. So they do have a strong built foundation, but then their side they don't, and because of that, we win on this. Because of that, I'm more than proud to oppose.